Welcome back, Book Fiends, to Wicked Good Books, a channel dedicated to books and things book adjacent. My name is Nick, I'm the host of this channel. For today's video, we're going to be talking about manga. This is actually part 1 of part 2 of the Wicked Good Books Weebisode arc that we're going to do on this channel, where we talk about all things manga and anime and the collectibles that surround those two things. I'm really excited for this one. I've wanted to shoot this one for a few months now. Manga and anime are two of my favorite things. I consume them on the regular, just as much as I consume books. With all that being said, just a little bit about me, my background and relationship to manga and anime, as we'll be talking about in this series. My very first manga was actually the Dragon Ball manga. I was a huge fan of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z on Toonami and Adult Swim growing up. Those were my constants in life. I was really big on Saturday morning cartoons, primarily anime. We'll get to that in the next video, but I really love Dragon Ball. It's on this list. It's a really great place to start if you're new to manga, and I feel like it's also just a great place to revisit if you're just looking for something old but still a classic, or just revisit something that you really like and brings happiness to you and puts a smile on my face. Initially, that was my introduction to manga. I had never read one before. I had never heard of it before. I just knew what I watched on Toonami and Adult Swim, and when someone told me that, oh, this is where it comes from, it was like a whole new world for me. I read it, and I was really confused at it. I didn't read a lot of comic books at that age growing up. I do now. I wasn't really huge into superheroes, surprisingly. And there's something about the format and the storytelling, especially in Dragon Ball, that really just piqued my interest. And from that point on, I just wanted to consume more stories like it. Unfortunately, I didn't get back into reading manga until I was in college. This was years later. And that one I remember vividly. That was Full Metal Alchemist, was the first manga I had read in like almost a decade or plus. A friend of mine had told me about the anime. I had started watching it. He explained to me about the differences between the manga and the anime, and he let me borrow his first volume, and the rest was history. I just from that point on fell in love with it, and I told myself it was something that I never wanted to be without. Manga was something I always wanted to consume moving forward and not to forget it, and I'm really happy because it's a pretty constant in my life. It brings me joy, and it's one of my favorite forms of storytelling, and it's some of my favorite stories too. So I'm really excited to bring this video to you guys and give you a little, just a little quick list of what I think are my top 5 favorite mangas, as well as 5 that I've kind of thought about not just being my top 5 favorite, but 5 I think are good places to start with if you're new to manga or just looking for something unique and interesting. These are mangas that I have personally read and own, except for one. I think there's one on this list I don't own that I would love to own, but I used to own it. We'll get there. All the manga on this top 5 list also have anime adaptations, which I highly recommend. They're really great. Some of them actually carry over to the next video. This is all going to be spoiler free, so I want to be careful with how I talk about these mangas, but I need to be able to pitch them to you, so that will require some things being revealed. Nothing you probably wouldn't find with that book, but I will put a link in the description about the names, the volumes, and the artists and writers for these stories. I'm not going to try and pronounce them because I'm only going to butcher it, make a fool of myself. But starting with the one I most recently read, that is The Promised Neverland. I actually watched the first episode of the anime, and it's interesting. I had a very similar experience with this manga and anime that I did with Gideon the Ninth, where I had a completely different idea of what I thought the story was about, and I avoided it for so long, and it just couldn't have been further from the truth. A friend of mine had let slip, not a spoiler per se, but like part of the plot to this story or this world that I was just not expecting. It took me off guard, and from that point on I was intrigued. I watched the first episode of the anime, and from that point on I was like, this is phenomenal, I need to know more about it, and I kind of want to read it first before I watch it. Because I've heard that the season 2 differs a little bit from the manga, but either way I'm okay with that. I kind of like both forms anyway, so very excited about this one. I read the first 2 volumes. It is so wonderful. I love it when the manga is just so slightly different from the anime in terms of the art style and some of the dialogue and some of the mini scenes in between chapters. It's really brilliant. But to give you an idea, The Promised Neverland is about these 3 children, Emma, Ray, and Norman, who are at this orphanage with a bunch of other children and one adult named Mother, what they call Mother, and she runs the orphanage, and they just do minuscule tasks, day-to-day chores, really intense schooling, They cook all their own food. They clean all their dishes and plates in the kitchen. It's very like self-sustained. But then something happens that requires these three oldest kids in the orphanage to kind of work together to start scheming an escape plan, because this orphanage is not what it seems. I can't give away more than that. Just know that there's a very dark truth that's looming outside of this orphanage, just outside the protective walls that keep these kids safe. And it's up to these three oldest children, the ones that rank highest in their class, to figure out a way that they can get themselves and all of their family members in this orphanage, including the babies and the young ones, to safety. So it's super interesting. The dialogue is really funny, despite the dark tones and dark moments. And it's just truly a wonderful manga. I highly recommend it. It's a great place to start. It's a little dark going into it. Be prepared for that. But I don't think there's a single one of these mangas I'm going to suggest that isn't a little bit dark in some degree. But next we have Dragon Ball. That's actually one I used to own. I used to have the omnibus of the first several volumes kind of compact together. However, when we moved down south from our home in New Hampshire, they were misplaced. I thought I had a box with me. I think I left them behind. They might have gotten ruined. It's kind of devastating, to be honest with you, because I really loved that manga. For those unfamiliar with the manga or the storyline, it circles around this boy named Goku, who's this child with this monkey tail, who's living on an island with this cranky old man, essentially learning martial arts. For fans of Marvel and DC and superheroes in general, I feel like this one fits right in there, although it's a little different. It's closer to martial arts than it is just superpowers in general. You have these larger-than-life beings from all over the world, as well as all of the universe and space and time, that congregate to Earth to compete with each other, to either show off their martial arts prowess and abilities, but primarily all these characters, the good and the bad, and the somewhere in between, are after these 7 Dragon Balls. These gold spheres, gold orbs, like with the numbers on them, and essentially 1 through 7, once you collect them all together, they allow you to summon this massive, massive dragon, this godlike being, who will grant you one wish. And that's pretty much the plot of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. There are different arcs and different villain arcs and character growth, and you watch these characters go from Goku being a child to an adult throughout the series, as well as get married and have children. So the series has a really long and amazing timeline where you can watch these characters literally grow. But there's something unique and special about Dragon Ball, and I think it had to do with the simplicity of it. Things get a little complicated as the series progresses. Dragon Ball felt like this little sliver, this slice of life in these characters, where there's action and adventure, but there's something wholesome about the characters at a younger age that just really just brought me back to. Always, anytime I flip a page and look at it, or come across a piece of art from it, it just brings me back to watching Adult Swim and Toonami growing up, and just consuming as much anime as I could. And as far as the manga goes, it's quite wonderful. I used to have the bind up for it. It reads pretty fast. There's a lot of volumes. I'm not sure exactly how many volumes there are of Dragon Ball. But after Dragon Ball, it goes into Dragon Ball Z, which is like the progression of the series. Highly recommend it for those fans of superhero movies, like I said, or Marvel and DC, or those who enjoy a very large cast of characters that grow and change, and good guys become bad guys become good guys. It is a very broad scoping storyline. Next on this list, we have Kimetsu no Yaiba, also known as Demon Slayer. If you haven't heard of this one, I'd be really surprised. This is a massively popular manga and anime over in Japan, and has really blown up over here in the States. It is a fan favorite. People seem to really love the art style and the storytelling, and the soundtrack especially. I believe Lisa does the opening theme to the anime, and people seem to really dig it. The manga is really great. I read the first 5 volumes. It's very similar to the anime, which is partly why I stopped reading it. But I do believe if you're trying to get into reading manga, or if you're looking for something refreshing and new that has lots of homages and old classic manga anime vibes, things like Rurouni Kenshin, Yu Yu Hakusho, and Inuyasha. This one might be right up your alley. It also reminds me a lot of Dororo, which is a new anime I started watching recently. So what is Demon Slayer about? It is about a young boy named Tenjiro who lives in a secluded hut or home with his family. His father seems to be nowhere present. Either he's dead or missing. You're not sure. They don't tell you right off the bat. But he does all the errands for his family, and he has to walk down the mountainside to go into town to get food and supplies. He actually ends up spending the night near that town, and the next morning when he arrives home, he comes to find his entire family has been slaughtered and eaten by demons, leaving no one alive except for his sister Nezuko, who appears to be half human and half demons, or something. She seems to be half in and out. So he quickly picks her up and runs for the town to try and get medical attention, to try and find help for her. He's able to get halfway to the town when he's attacked by a demon slayer who sees his sister as a threat. And after a brief exchange between the two of them, Tanjiro is allowed to leave with his sister. And then that's kind of where the story picks up. So essentially the basic pitch of the story is that Tanjiro, a young boy, joins the Demon Slayer Corps in hopes to finding a cure to bring his sister back to being a full human being. And that's sort of like the basic pitch for the story. It has lots of really funny moments, lots of great heartfelt moments between the two siblings. It has some ridiculous, silly moments, which I think is kind of par for the course when it comes to certain manga. But I don't mind them so much. There is one character that I think is kind of irritating, but I think that's kind of the point of his character. I'm sure some of you already know who I'm talking about. It reminds me of a lot of anime that I grew up watching on Toonami and Adult Swim, and I feel like it's a really great place to start for new fans of manga, and might bring some nostalgia for older readers looking for something similar to the classics they really seem to enjoy. I think one thing that makes this manga special, and the story in general, is the relationship between Tanjiro and Nezuko and the friends they find along the way. Everyone is really unique, and there are no two characters that are kind of the same. They're all different. All the demon slayers that you meet have different powers and different stances and different perspectives, as well as like codes of how they like the codes of honor and how they act as demon slayers, as well as the bad guys. Well, I think it's probably my favorite part about Demon Slayer actually is that the bad guys aren't just your one note, I want to rule the world, I want power. They might seem that way, but they're always so much deeper than that, and that's something that Tanjiro and Nezuko find out throughout their journey that I think really shines in this manga and really sets it apart from other shonen mangas and storylines like this. Next, we have one of my all-time favorite mangas, all-time favorite stories, favorite animes of all time, in my top 5, and that is Attack on Titan. Those who follow my channel or watch my progress on Goodreads, you know I've been really consuming tons of this on the regular lately. I am caught up on the anime, and I'm about to be fully caught up on the manga. I got 1 volume left, and then I'm waiting with everybody else until next month, and there's only 2 more volumes coming out, so I am just as anxious and eagerly anticipating this end of this amazing story with all of you. I couldn't recommend this manga enough to fans of the genre, fans of manga, fans of comics in general, just good storytelling, even people who have never read manga or watched anime. It is very strange, it is very dark and unsettling. It has moments of just dread and will fill you with anxiety, but you keep coming back for more. And I think that is just testament to the unique world building and incredible characters created by Isayama that I think you just, not that you can't find anywhere, but I really believe this is one of the most unique stories ever told in manga format. And the anime is just as good, if not better. I truly love them both equally, to be honest with you. I recently just caved and started collecting in reverse the Colossal editions, which we'll talk about in a minute, which are quite stunning and very worth the price tag regardless of what you might have read. We'll talk about that in a minute. For this one, I'm just going to read straight off the back. It is quite the unique story. It's kind of complex and it's sometimes a little weird, so I think it's just best to let the work speak for itself than me try to explain it. For the past century, what's left of mankind has hidden in a giant 3-walled city, trapped in fear of the bizarre giant humanoids known as Titans. Little is known about where they came from or why they are bent on consuming humankind, but the sudden appearance of an enormous Titan is about to change everything. And that's a really good pitch, I think, a really solid summary of what this story is about and what you're in for when you jump into it. But you have these members of a scout uniform, which is kind of like a military/exploration group, trained at a very young age, and because a lot of them die quickly and don't their lifespan, because these Titans are quite vicious and hard to take down. They're hiring and recruiting at younger and younger ages, and so I believe it's a 3rd or 4th generation of, actually I think it's probably more than that. This generation of scouts become the main characters of the storyline. You follow them all the way through, and they essentially rise to the challenge to try and defend their home from these giants, these Titans, and at the same time try to discover why they're there and what is really going on behind the scenes. And it is just truly spectacular. The storytelling, the pacing of it, you're never bored. You are constantly second guessing characters' decisions and constantly second guessing your own judgment for certain characters. It is one of those mangas where the good guys and the bad guys and the lines in the middle become totally blurred. And by the end, even where I am at the end of the series, even I am not quite sure who I trust and who I believe. Let's look at the Colossal Edition real quick. I actually recently just purchased this one. I'm trying to collect all of them. They are quite expensive. Oops, sorry, Sam. It is, as you can see, a thick beast. It is actually also very heavy, which I think might seem kind of obvious, but this is like a tome. It is truly spectacular. I really debated buying it for a while because I wasn't sure if the paperback quality was going to last or not. And to be honest with you, I could see the spine cracking pretty easily, but the quality of the artwork on this paper they printed on and the size of it, especially because some of these battles in some of these characters, especially the Titans, their scale is quite broad, we'll say. And it is pretty amazing to see it displayed like this on this amazing quality paper and this size. It makes it truly a unique reading experience, and you get a lot of volumes in this, so it's really worth the money to invest. If it's a series that you end up falling in love with, I would highly recommend reading the first few volumes, and if it really, really pulls you in and you really love it, I would say invest in the Colossal Editions. I think it's a great bang for your buck, and I think it's a worthy investment for you to get into the series. I'm looking forward to getting the other ones. This brings us to our final entry, my top 5 manga suggestions list for you. This is one of my all-time favorite mangas, as well as my all-time favorite animes, and we'll talk about that in the next video, but that is the Ancient Magus Bride. A friend of mine had introduced me to the storyline. I'd never heard of it before. Actually, that's not entirely true. I held the Funko Pop of Elias, one of the main characters, along with the Bonehead, in my hands at Hot Topic. I didn't know who he was or what it belonged to. I just read the Ancient Magus Bride. And I thought, oh, this looks kind of cool. And I put it back. And I'll never get that moment back because he's now like $90. And I just can't justify spending it. But I almost kind of want to. But anyways, Ancient Magus Bride, it is truly one of my all-time favorite mangas. I think it's a great place to start if you're new to manga. If you're returning to manga, or just like me, a avid consumer of manga and have not read this one, it is a worthy investment of your time and money, I think. Story and art by Core Yamazaki. This is a story about Chise, who first appears to be human. This girl with long red hair and green eyes, who has found herself enslaved and sold to the highest bidder at this auction meant for mages and alchemists and other magical entities. And you don't know how she got there, or if this place is underground, or if it's hidden from society. All that matters is a man named Elias purchases her from this auction and teleports her to his home in the countryside. I think it actually takes place in the UK. Steeped in Celtic mythology as well as mythologies ranging across the globe. It is just really unique in that regard, and that's a really soft pitch for it. I feel like there's more to it than meets the eye when you're looking at the cover and trying to figure out what's going on. Essentially, Chise is given the opportunity by this inhuman mage to study under her and become a mage herself. And it is slowly revealed over time that both of them are not quite what they seem. She is not fully human, and he is not fully monster either. And between the two of them, the longer time they spend together, the more they learn from each other, both sort of unintentionally helping each other grow as people and as creatures, and essentially saving one another. And there's a really sweet, wholesome slice of life story happening here. You get to watch this character Chise, who I really feel like out of all the characters of anime manga that I can think of, is one of the top 3 most prominent and powerful female characters whom you see growth almost right out the first volume, but throughout the entire series, she's a different person in a great way. She grows so much as an individual from the first volume to the most recent, and it's really cool to watch her grow that way. I feel like sometimes characters can stay stagnant, and they go through 30 volumes, and they're still the same old character, and sometimes that's okay. But for this one, it is really cool to watch both of these characters grow exponentially, and I just think it's a really great story. It's kind of like a slice of life, but it also has some really dark moments, like real dark. It's definitely not for children. I'm not going to give age groups here because I don't want to get in trouble. But I wouldn't recommend it for anybody under 14. It has really dark moments. It has a bunch of great subplots as well as a main plot that overarches everything. But some of the best moments are the slice of life moments that take place within their home in the countryside, where the two of these characters just kind of coexist and learn how to coexist as adults and individuals, which I feel like a lot of us can relate to, and that's a concept I think a lot of people can enjoy. And just some of the side characters are so memorable in this story that it's just hard to put down. I find myself thinking about it on the regular, even when I'm not reading it. Yeah, that's Ancient Magus Bride. It really is one I cannot speak highly enough of it. Between Ancient Magus Bride and Attack on Titan, they are two of my favorite mangas of all time. I consume them quite often, and I reread them. I love the animes for them and the mangas. I'm trying to collect a Ancient Magus Bride statue for the shelf, but they're like super expensive, so I'm kind of waiting for a smaller one. But if you're looking for a great manga to start with and you don't know where to go and you're kind of overwhelmed by all the choices, I truly believe if you like magical realism and fantasy, and a story that's both wholesome and comforting but also dark and mysterious, the Ancient Magus Bride might be the perfect choice for you. That's it for today's video, guys. If you've read any of these manga, please comment down below. Let me know which ones are your favorite. I'd love to hear from you. As well as I'd love if you just pause this video for a second and just drop down in the comments and write down what your first manga was. I'd love to hear it and compare and see what the range was. I'm always interested to see and hear other people's journeys with this medium. I think it's a great medium for storytelling. Japanese anime and manga tells stories that I feel like you can't get anywhere else. You truly can't. I firmly believe that. Stay tuned for part 2 of this series, the Wicked Good Books Weebisodes. Weebisode number 2 is going to focus primarily on anime. I'm going to be shooting that one later this week. Thank you so much for the support on this channel. It means the world to me. I look forward to creating more content for you guys. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Stay wicked.